Hi there, my name is David Anderson, and I'd like to welcome you to Getting Started with Articulate Storyline 360. This series of tutorials will get you up and running quickly with Storyline 360's new features. In this first video, we'll give you a quick tour of Storyline 360's interface, highlight the essential features, where to find them, and demonstrate a typical workflow for building interactive e-learning. So let's go ahead and get started. When you first open Storyline, you'll see the launch screen where you can find some resources for getting more out of Storyline 360. This includes learning more about Storyline's new responsive player, checking out the growing library of assets and content library, and launching Articulate Review to review and share your uploaded courses to gather feedback with your team and customers. Over here, you can create a new project, or if you're creating a software simulation, you can select that. You can also start here and, of course, import content with PowerPoint files, importing Quizmaker's quizzes. You can import Engage interactions. You can import story templates. Story template files let you import one slide or the entire template file. And finally, you can import questions into Storyline 360 to save development time. And down here, we have our recent projects that we've worked on, so we can quickly access those. If this is the first time you've opened Storyline, then this area will be completely blank for you, but your most recent projects will show up here. And then finally, down here, we can browse for more content files elsewhere on your hard drive. So we'll just go ahead and open an existing project. When you first open Storyline, you'll be inside Story View, and Story View is just a way to give you a big picture overview of your course. You get a bird's eye view of everything in your project, and you can see the flow and the structure of your course. You can also see that we have a couple different scenes right here. Now, scenes are just really a collection of slides and a way to organize your content. So you can see right here, this is scene 1, and then this is scene 2, and you can have more scenes, as many as you like. And inside of scene 1, we can see we've got a number of slides here. We can see the flow of the course, so it's kind of linear, and then it branches out on this slide based on the different decisions the learner makes, right? You can see where the branching happens right here. Now you notice these little arrows coming down between the slides. That's just showing you the relationship and how the slides link to each other. Now, if I click one of the slides, you can see that the arrows then turn to red arrows. And if I click one of those arrows, I can then bring open the trigger wizard to quickly change how the slides are navigating to one another. And cancel that. You can also see the triggers for those slides over here on the right in the triggers panel. So as I click each of these slides, you can see where the triggers panel updates for all the triggers on that particular slide. And then down here, we have the slide properties where you can adjust how the slide advances, how the slide should behave when the learner revisits the slide. You also have some navigation options down below. I'm going to go ahead and create a new scene, just a blank scene, so we can work from there. So click the new scene button up here. And here's the new slide. We can see this is scene 3, and it's an untitled slide. I'm just going to double click this slide to enter slide view. Now, this view will be familiar if you've worked in previous versions of Storyline, and for those who are new to Storyline, the interface should still feel familiar if you've ever worked in Microsoft PowerPoint. So let's take a look at a few options we have when we're editing and building our e-learning slides. So when you first create the slide, you just see a blank slide, and that's the way Storyline works. It's a free-form editing environment, which means that you can put whatever you want on the screen, you can move it around, you can resize it, you can do pretty much whatever you want with it. Now, when we look at the layout, we can see that we have our scenes slides over here. So it's a quick way to navigate between the scenes, as well as any question banks that you have in your course. Now, you can still find any slide if you jump back over here to Story View and pick that slide. Or with your slide view, you can always just navigate to a specific scene and then view the slides within that scene. We'll jump back to scene 3. If we look at the bottom of the screen, we can see we have our timeline, states, and notes tabs. States and timeline you're going to use extensively when you build, and we'll take a closer look at those in a few minutes. Over here we have our triggers panel, and this is where all of your actions are created in Storyline. And then down here we have our slide layers. Now, when you're authoring in Storyline, you really have 3 main authoring components. You have your states, you have your slide layers, and then you have your triggers. And in a general sense, when you build your interactive e-learning, you're always going to work with states, layers, and triggers. And we'll take a closer look at this in a real-world project a little later in this tutorial. All right, if we look at the options we have on the top of the ribbon toolbar, we can see we have our Home tab. We have some ways to insert and customize the slides. We have a text editor here, so if I had some text on the slide, I could do a lot of formatting, a lot of things we can do with our text. And then if we had any shapes or graphics on the slide, we could customize the way those look with the drawing tools over here. And then finally, our options for publishing, previewing, and customizing the course player. Next tab over, we have the Insert tab, and this is probably going to be the most popular tab you use because it's where you insert pretty much all types of content, right? You have ways to insert slide layers and converting to freeform, which we'll look at later in the tutorial series. All of your illustrations, media, pictures, your characters here from Content Library. And as we move over, we can see we have some options now for interactive objects, right? So the buttons, the dials, markers that are pre-built for you. So the interactive area is really where you create that interactive capability on your slide, where you make things happen. And then on the first part of this toolbar, we actually just have where you bring the content into your slide as you start to author and assemble your slides. Now, speaking of slides, we have a new Slides tab in Storyline 360. And here we can access Content Library, view the templates that you actually have stored locally on your hard drive, as well as the basic layouts that are currently available based on the slide or the template that you've opened up. You can also import PowerPoint, Quizmaker, and Engage and Storyline also from this menu, just like we did on the start screen. You have your quizzing options, screen recording options, as well as, again, preview and through publishing of your project. We jump over now to the Design tab. The Design tab has a couple key features that I want to point out. First off, this is where you set the story size, right? So by default, you have a story size of 720 by 540. If you click the menu, you can see that you also have a 16 by 9 ratio and a custom option. So if you open a file or you create a new file and you want to change it, this is where you're going to make those changes. This is also where you can customize the look and feel of your course. So design themes have pre-built colors and fonts in them. And if you wanted to make specific changes to those, you can do that with the theme colors as well as the theme fonts, right? So if you want to choose a font pair for your course, it's better to do that up front than it is to manually change those as you build each slide. With slide transitions, you can set transitions for your slides as well as your slide layers. So actually apply it at the slide level. And then if you go into the slide layers, you can apply that. One option here that a lot of people miss is the apply to all. So if you have a slide transition, say a fade that moves each slide from fading into the other, you can click apply to all, and it's going to apply to all the slides in your course. Same thing with your slide layers. Now with animations, there's three main components to how you use animations. You have animations that control how objects are brought onto the slide, the entrance animations. Then you have your exit animations, which determine how the objects will leave the slide. And then for custom animations, you have your motion path animations. Next up, we have our View tab where you can manage your slide and feedback masters. If I click the slide master, you'll see that I already have a bunch of different layouts here for this course. And of course, I can delete them or customize these in any way I like. You see the text placeholders as well as the layouts. Now, one of the cool things is if you import PowerPoint files that have design themes already established, Storyline will recognize the themes. So that includes the overall layout, the colors, the fonts that were in that theme. They're also going to be added as a new layout in your project. And when you're in Slide Master View, you can customize your course's theme right here. And then you have the options for the theme colors as well as the theme fonts. You can set those up here, or you can set them through the Design tab. Now, if we jump up here to View again, and we jump into Feedback Master, you can see that the Feedback Masters are a lot like the Slide Masters. These just control how the content looks on your slide layers. And you can customize these any way you want to, just like you can the Slide Masters. Now, one thing I'd like to mention is that Feedback Masters now share the same color themes and font themes as your regular Slide Masters. You'll notice that you don't have an option here to customize the fonts or the colors. So you only have to customize this once for your project, and those are going to be automatically applied to your Feedback Masters. And then, of course, there's all sorts of help available to you. That includes tutorials, blog posts, questions, technical support. Anything we can do to help you be successful, we're committed to doing. Now, under each tab, you also have the option to preview your slide, a scene, the whole project, or even publish your course. So if I click the option down here to publish, I can bring open the publish options. To publish to Articulate 360, you have web options here. Now, one thing you'll notice for the tabs here is we have some new formats for how you publish your courses. So if I come down here to properties and I just click this link, you can see that you now have options for making HTML your primary output and a Flash possibly as a fallback, or if you want to stick with Flash as your primary output. It's a really fantastic feature for controlling for how you publish your courses. Now down here you have the option for the mobile player and whether or not to allow it for offline viewing. Typically leave these selected so that I'm always reaching the largest possible audience with my published courses. You may have reasons for not wanting to share it that way, so just another option for you with your publishing. All right, I'm going to close out. So there's a really quick overview of Storyline's interface. Now I just want to build a really quick interaction to show you kind of how everything works together and the Storyline workflow for building interactive e-learning. Now for this project, we're just going to build something simple. Just going to be a character on the slide. You'll have a text box for the character and a button. And then when we click the button, the character will change its state into a different pose, and then we'll show some content on a new layer. Let's go ahead and begin by inserting a caption. And we do that by just going up to the Insert tab and choose Caption. And we'll just choose one of these pre-built captions for us. Just click and drag to draw it on the slide. Next, let's go ahead and insert a character. So we're still on the Insert tab, right? Click Character. And this pulls open the content library of characters. A couple things about this. I actually see the characters that I have not downloaded. You see this little download icon, as well as characters that I already have. And then we have some sorting options over here to sort by either photographic, realistic, as well as some additional sorting options. I'm going to choose the new realistic illustrations, and since I already have Lily downloaded, I'll just stick with her. And once you've downloaded your character, then you can take a look at their expressions and poses to choose a specific pose when you insert them. I'm going to keep her at the default setting, and I'll just click Insert. And now that she's on the screen, I can format her like any other graphic or shape. I can crop her a little bit and then scale her up. All right, so at this point, we just have a couple objects on the slide, right? We have a caption box, and then we have a character. Now, what we want is a couple things to happen. First, we want to create an interaction where I click a button and then change the expression of this character. So right now, she has a neutral expression, and we want to change that to something different. And then I also want to change the feedback box. I want something to appear here, some feedback or just a quote from the character, and we'll use slide layers to manage that. So before we do that, let's go ahead and get a button on the slide. So we go up to Insert, and I'm just going to choose one of the pre-built buttons and just click on the slide to insert it. Now, before we continue, I just want to point out how states are working here. So if I have my button selected and I come down here to the states panel, you can see that we already have some pre-built states for this button. And the pre-built states here just give some visual feedback to the learner to indicate what is going on with the button, whether there's a hover state, which indicates that it's active and can be clicked, the down state when the mouse is pressed down, visited states means something's actually already been clicked, and then disabled states means it's visible on the slide, but just inactive, can't be used. And I'm going to jump over the timeline real quick, and I just want to name my objects. Always a good practice to do that. So in this blue one, we're going to call this one, I'm just going to type happy button on the button, but then also down here in the timeline, it's always a good practice to rename your objects. I'll call my character Lily. I like to use the character's name. And for the chat box, I'll just call this chat box. So let's go ahead and add our first trigger to change the state of our character. Now, if I click the character, you can see down here in the states panel that there's only one state, and that's the normal state. But the illustrated characters include some built-in expression states that will get added either as we add them manually through the edit states, or Storyline will add them for us if we add triggers to objects and then set that as a selected state. So let's see what that looks like. So the button is selected. Let's come over here to the triggers panel and create a new trigger. Now, when you're working through the triggers, a really great way to figure out which trigger to use, because you can see that there's quite a few, is to ask yourself, what is it you want to do, and then when do you want to do it? So in this case, right, we want to have her change her expression when we click the button. So the action here would be change the state of, and what do we want to change the state of? Not the button, but the character. When the user clicks happy button, I'm going to change her state. But here's the state I want to change it to. By default, normal is there. But if I scroll down, you can see the built-in expressions that are included with the illustrated characters. So let's just say that she has a happy expression when we click this button, right? She's neutral, click it once, it's a happy button, and she'll show a happy expression. Go ahead and click OK. And let's preview this slide. So come up here to preview this slide. And so here's everything we just saw on the slide. When I mouse over the button, you see how the button changes as well as the cursor changes. And that's because this button has a trigger on it that's indicating that something can be clicked or something can happen. When I click the button, there's her change of state. So we changed her from the neutral expression to the happy expression. Let's go ahead and close the preview. And let's jump back down here to the states panel. So my button is selected. Let me select the character. And check this out. Storyline added a new state for us. In this case, states are a lot like expressions for the illustrated characters because the expression of happy has now been added to our edit states. All right, so now let's take a look at how slide layers and triggers work. So we want to create a basic layer that will provide the feedback here in the chat box. We come down here to the slide layers panel, and we can create a new slide layer by clicking the new layer button. And again, it's always a good practice to rename your layers. I'm going to call this one feedback happy. All right, so I want to go ahead and add the text for the feedback, and we do that by going up to insert, text box, and let's just drag a text box around the size of our chat box. And we'll just type in something quick. Now we have one last thing to do, and that is to add a second trigger to the happy button to also display the slide layer with the feedback. So let's jump back down to the base layer, and I'll select my happy button. And you can already see over here in the triggers panel that we already have a trigger set to change her state to happy, which is what we just did. And let's add one more trigger to show the slide layer. And that's how interactivity works in Storyline. You just keep adding triggers to increase the amount of interactivity. So you always start with one, and then you can just keep adding as many triggers as you like. So in this case, we've already added one to change your state. What is it we want to do in this example? Well, we don't want to change the state, but we want to do what? Show layer. And if I click the menu, we only have one layer in here, feedback happy, so we'll use that. And when the user clicks, the button happy. And now you can see we have two triggers for this one object. All right, so let's go ahead and just preview our file. So preview the slide. Okay, everything looks the same. I click the happy button, and there's our feedback layer for the text, and we also see that her expression has changed. So really, that's the essence of working in Storyline. Most of the interactivity you work with will either be a trigger that changes the state of an object on the screen, or if it's going to be a trigger that shows or hides information that you built on slide layers. Now, there's a lot more you can do in Storyline. The first thing I recommend is just going through all of these getting started tutorials. They'll answer a lot of the basic questions, show you the essential features for helping you get started, and then finally take advantage of the resources in the community. Now, if you have any questions at all, please jump in the forums and ask. You'll get plenty of help. All right, so we'll see you in the next tutorial.